So it's called Caitlin Johnston, Structure, Responsibility, Self and Other. Might not sound a great inspiring title, but I think it's quite an interesting video. So the content of this is better than the title. Hope so. Let's start. Well, Caitlin Johnston penned a fantastic article just the other day. It's part of it I really like. I'll just start reading it out. And when I get to the point that I want to highlight, I'll maybe stop there. So her article titled Rabbit Holes and Men Behind Curtains. A better title than what I called mine here, but more interesting. And the title means that you kind of find the people behind the propaganda matrix, those pulling the strings, but there's nothing to find. So, but we'll get to that. So she writes, you dive down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, searching for the man behind the curtain. You've seen enough to be convinced everything you've been taught about the world is false. And now it's just a matter of finding out who's really responsible for making such a mess of things. And for a while, your search seems fruitful. You discover that you don't really live in a democracy like you were taught, where the public influences government behaviour using their votes, or even in a separate sovereign nation like you learned in school. You discover that your country is part of a globe-spanning power structure, which effectively functions as an empire, the most powerful empire ever to exist. And you discover that this empire has drivers who aren't beholden to the electorate in any meaningful way, acting not to advance the interests of the public, but to advance the agenda of planetary domination. So who are the drivers of the empire? You dive down more rabbit holes. You discover secret government agencies with long-time operatives who don't leave with the outgoing official elected government, but stay on, helping to keep the gears of the empire turning, regardless of who voters elect to be in the face of the operation. You discover a revolving door system in which the same empire managers are rotated in and out of positions in the official elected government, working in think tanks and military industrial complex advisory boards and mass media punditry when their party is out of office and rotating back in when their turn comes back around. You discover plutocrats who use their vast wealth to influence government policy via campaign donations, influential think tanks, mass media control and corporate lobbying, who often operate with and profit from a tremendous amount of overlap with government agencies. You discover organisations and institutions in which the wealthy and powerful congregate and coordinate to advance their agendas, often with a very high degree of secrecy. But in all this rabbit holing and discovering, you still don't find any man behind the curtain. You come to see that any of the people you've been looking at could die tomorrow and the imperial machine would trudge on uninterrupted. There could be a giant violent revolution, and these people could be guillotined by the thousands. And unless drastic changes were made to the systems which gave rise to them, someone else would just step in to fill their shoes. I want to stop there because that's the structure part. I want to get back to that bit where she said, you come to see that any of the people you've been looking at could die tomorrow and the machine would trudge on uninterrupted. I think that is an absolutely brilliant and accurate point, which I already knew. It's because it's a structure that's automatic. It's not a system where politicians or anything say, right, you do this, you do that. I mean, obviously the capitalist system continues regardless. So whether it's a top business you like, just think of the top business you like, or whether it's Sports Direct, Mike Ashley, these a bad one therefore, maybe it's in some people's minds. Whether it's, they're and then think of all the other million businesses. It all just continues on and on and on and on. So it doesn't matter when the US shut the government down. America goes on and on and on and on. Any tourist who's gone to New York that day or go to Times Square is not going to see any difference, obviously. So that's because the power structures, when I say structure, I mean the power structures are in place. So it's like saying if you guillotined 100 or 1,000 people who are aged such and such to such and such, it doesn't mean to say that the power system stops, because it's not reliant on anyone. It's not reliant. So to be aged between 25 and 34 is not reliant on you just because you're 25 to 34, or any representative of you who's 25 to 34. The system is much, 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 much bigger than that. We're dealing with multinational firms, multinational billionaires. It's an empire. It's not reliant on anyone. So you can't, like she says, even if you guillotine the people you think are powerful, it won't make any difference. I mean, it's the same as like, say it's something you like. Say you go to Glasgow Central Station. It's my example idea for public service, public sector. If I always give the NHS or education, it's so predictable. So I'll give that. And you go at the train station and you find the staff friendly, and when someone's ill and they can't drive the train, he's been guillotined. It doesn't matter, they'll get someone else to do it. See what I mean? It's just automatic. And that's the same thing. Just because you like it doesn't mean to say that it's different. Right? Dislike capitalism, think it's immoral. You might think there's some healthy parts of our society, though. Often people who are on the left say, yeah, the public sector's the healthy part. And therefore, that also functions by itself. It's automatic. So you know, you'd need a massive, enormous, gigantic pandemic, probably beyond COVID, to actually. And even COVID didn't change power structures, did it at all? So you know what I mean? It's just, I think the point is it's structure, it's not people. You can't guillotine your enemies and then think, well, everything's changed now. Because you have to change power structure, you have to do something. You have to change the power relations. You don't change the power relations by killing your opponent. This is beyond the immoral to do so, right? We're just thinking like, even if it wasn't, it wouldn't achieve anything. And yeah, the evidence of that is when America shuts down its government. Doesn't change anything. Nothing whatsoever changes. In fact, that's why they do it, I think. At least that's what the ones who try to get the government shut down said, Republicans. So it doesn't change anything. Right. So that's structure, and here just to get the way I word it, which is more like an amateur Althusser or Gramsci. They say you've got the propaganda matrix. I can't remember the exact words these people use, but that's what they say. They've got propaganda matrix, and it just functions. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And should the people see through it, which is extremely unlikely unless there's a crisis, and a genuine huge crisis, then the military step in and say, okay, you've seen through us. Well, you're right. We hold this thing up, and we protect this system at all costs. And you're now the enemy. It's because you're British. Doesn't mean to say you're not the enemy. You're as much the enemy as if you're a foreign nation. So that's there in case we see through them. In case we see through the military would go out on the street and kill British people to uphold the propaganda matrix. It wouldn't be the propaganda matrix as such anymore because they've been seen through it, but it would just be more honest. It would just be saying, well, we're going to kill you to preserve the system that we have, which is capitalism and all its inequality, all its power inequality. We're not going to deny it anymore. We exist to preserve this system. That's what we're here for. That's what they would say. They wouldn't just say, okay, you've seen through it. There you go, it's all yours. No. They wouldn't do that. If you think that, then you're an absolute mug. Right, so but now I want to move on to responsibility. And when I say responsibility, I mean ours. Those of us who have seen through the propaganda matrix. We're not authoritarians. Or not if you agree with my worldview or Kevin Johnston's worldview. We don't believe in some kind of Stalinist or Leninist massive state communism or anything, because I just think that just continues the same sick joke of propaganda matrix. We don't go for that. And I don't mean like social democrats sometimes completely crazily get accused of being communists, right? They're not. Nor wet Tories. They're not communists either, and they get accused of it. Nor liberals. They're not communists. They're in the state system of the propaganda matrix in the West, which is vast power inequality, not vast power equality. Which is, if it was a state communist, it would be forced too authoritarian. It doesn't work. And like it's because there's a power structure, it's unequal as well in a way. So that's not what we're about. And obviously, I was just protecting the state capitalist types from the accusation of being communist, because while I don't sympathise and empathise with the state capitalist, liberal, social democrats, Tory wets or whatever, I do think that it's wrong when people accuse them of being communists. It's just crazy. Communism's planned economy, not a free market economy. They're for free market economy. So anyway, and by the way, I wouldn't get rid of the market in non-essentials. I'd keep it. But our responsibility is to do something to change the power relations. So instead of trying to get a top elite of commies or whatever to do it, we need to do this ourselves. And I've started to see a move in that direction in recent years. We have online publications which are obviously going to continue to grow. And thankfully they're all quite small, because we don't want a propaganda matrix. We don't want to give megaphones to an elite. So we don't want to do that ourselves. So it's good that they're small. And now we're starting to see the growth, the beginning, of online basic incomes. And now they need to be small. We'll be going to a few people, a few thousand people or whatever. But we need to see a massive growth in these. And some of them need to succeed. By succeeding, they would be, mini in terms of how many people are receiving, but big in terms of how much they're receiving at the bottom. And they need to grow. They need to follow in the footsteps of the online publications. So that's like our responsibility. So by the way, I'm a UBI supporter myself, but I'm taking responsibility for something that requires a lot of work, effort, energy, time. It's difficult. So it's not a case of just wants to get money for himself. It's not as simple. My whole thinking isn't that simple. Everyone wants money for themselves, but we're going to get to this self and other in a minute anyway. I'll get to it now, probably. Yeah, we'll get to self and other now. self and other doesn't have to be perfect. What I mean is, say, I think some critics sometimes think, oh, I bet it's selfish, really. Let's say someone was doing something that was going to work for self and others, and you were able to put technology in the mind of that person and head and discover what percentage was self-motivated for the self and what percentage was motivated for others. Now, let's say that the critics of self and others were correct, and that the person scored high, very high for self and very low for others. As long as what I'm saying now, as long as the outcome of his idea or her idea benefited not only the self but also others, then it doesn't matter so much. And I would shrug my shoulders at it in the same way that if the person who came about for dental care was motivated by himself having toothache, I think so. It doesn't matter much. But in other words, although you could say that ideally in a perfect utopian world, when you get into the head, you get a 50-50 self and others. You don't have to go that far. Just don't. So the criticism of anyone who's getting it, my idea was self and others, that I bet they're more selfish than others. I don't think it's that important a criticism. It's if the idea has the same outcome. I don't know, what's it like? It's like it's just like anything that benefits other people if it's been motivated for selfish reasons. As long as it does what it says roughly on the tin as the outcome for other people, I'm sure other people wouldn't mind. You know what I mean? I got this money. Well, I didn't like the fact that he'd brought the idea about because it was a bit too much for the self. See what I mean? It makes no sense. So I'm not going to say any more on that because, well, it's so obvious. But it is a criticism that I could imagine critics using. Some people criticize you for almost anything. So this principle of self and others is our responsibility to move it on to that. And I think we're, like I said, the online publications are a few years old, perhaps. The UBI's basic income is brand new, but that needs to grow. So you see what I mean by challenging the propaganda matrix and building on what Caitlin Johnstone says by there's no point guillotining them, even if it wasn't immoral to do so, which it is. But even if it wasn't, that would be pointless. What we do, I mean, this way I'm talking here undermines them for sure, but I'm not even really doing it for that. We're doing it because we want a healthy society. Now, if you don't change power relations in society, and this is a way of changing power relations in society, because if there's millions of little mini publications and there was thousands of mini UBI basic incomes all over the place, this totally destroys the propaganda matrix and brings responsibility into ourselves collectively, individually and collectively. We don't think as an I, we think of as an I and the other. More like relational. And this is the way to go. This is the way to do it. Like I said, we don't destroy our enemies. We just ignore them, and we build our own world. That's where we're at the moment. We're starting to build our own world. So, if someone said, then, is this the end of politics? My answer is it's the end of politics as we have known it, because it becomes irrelevant to us. This, what we're on now, is relevant. Our own publications and our own basic incomes. I've just got a bean here. She can be very sweet, and she can also be very territorial. If you heard something barking outside, she'd go berserk right now. So yeah, we build our own world. That's the responsibility part. So it does undermine the propaganda matrix, but we're doing it for positive reasons, for our own health. And it's not about destroying them. It's about ignoring them, just getting on with our lives, taking responsibility. They're an irrelevance. We've explained a million times what their corruption is. And damn, she's looking out the window. She might go crazy soon. I'm just might have to shut them blinds. It's not that Beans going territorial crazy right now, but it's if I leave these open, there's a good chance that you'd see a dog going past. Oh, she's just jumped. She's got enough room to go crazy in a minute instead. Right, so we're doing it for positive reasons, responsibility, self and other. That does undermine the propaganda matrix, but it's about us just getting the health we want, not wanting to be ill with them. Right? And they are ill. What the propaganda matrix is diagnosed with by me is political psychosis. It's not an emotional attack. I'm not feeling blood boiling inside me. I'm not feeling like I want to negatively attack, want to be angry and outburst. None of that whatsoever. I just what I do think. Totally calm. But look at the things that are associated with them. And I said, and I am in a calm mind state. Division, separation, superiority, vast inequality concerning income, wealth, voice, power. There's power and control, the divisive, the manipulate, the gaslight, the mind possess, the character assassinate, the concentration of power, like a cartel. Words like propaganda come to mind, emissions come to mind, repetition comes to mind, and gender setting comes to mind. Divide and rule, herding into cages, artificial partisan divide, fake freedom of speech, the set terms, labels, mantras in order to use those as ingredients to further their power and control and to maintain the status quo with them at the top, the rest of us at the bottom, dishing out all the propaganda and maintain all of that. There's a neediness for power, control and status, which, what can you define that as other than a psychosis, considering how vast it is? A collective psychosis on scales that are unimagined for those people who are totally possessed in the mind by it and cannot even see through it, even though it's everywhere. I just think that the arguments, I just go round in circles. So, we all want merit and equality. Sort of like this crazy argument in society, which is just so ridiculous considering virtually everyone supports getting money to people at the bottom and also supports merit. Obviously, it relativizes. One relativizes the other. You have to do that anyway because if you just said that's how everyone just earns the money to get the money and then that's the merit, then you're going to have people who are like billionaires and people who are homeless. So that's what we got. Yeah. Well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Because then people who support merit say, that's not what I bloody meant. They think that merit means, like, there's limits. Like, merit might mean you work this hard, so you get a lot. But it doesn't mean that you get through the outside the solar system. So the equality actually doesn't contradict it. It kind of like helps merit, and merit helps equality. Because, like, for instance, I might go on about equality more, but I think a brain surgeon should be paid a damn sight more than I get, right? Much, much more. So we're all on the same side. So I'm sick of that stuff, right? It's like inflation, as if some people are for it and some people are against it. I don't think so. It's the same as that. So we need to get over all that crap, right? You don't want to get back into the state system and the state superstructure, the propaganda matrix. What we want to do is we want to build our own world that leaves all of them political psychotics to be ill themselves. We are now nothing to do with them. We build our world ourselves. Right. So, in conclusion, this builds on Caitlin Johnstone's ideas of structure, power relations, because we cannot defeat it by just attacking it. In fact, we cannot even put can't even put that much of a dent in it by attacking it. Whether it's good or bad, the good parts of it couldn't be dented. The bad parts can't be dented. The state superstructure propaganda matrix cannot be touched by lashing out at it or attacking it or even killing the people in it. Not that we would, but hypothetically, it would not work even if it wasn't a model, which it is. But even if it wasn't a model, it wouldn't work. The state superstructure doesn't die by killing its people. It just goes on and on and on. State superstructures, people have already all died. They died when they got old, like 50 years ago or whatever. And it's still here because it just goes on and on and on. It is a state, it's a structure of power relations. It is not anything to do with the people in it. So, for that reason, it will never die. And therefore, we have to take responsibility ourselves to build our own world and ignore theirs. I think I'm going to label their world political psychosis and our world cure. And also post-propaganda matrix, I suppose, but don't want to be reminded of them. It's not even that post-propaganda, just cure. We'll keep it at cure because it's not post-propaganda matrix as such, because theirs will still exist until people see through it. So if people see through it, they'll naturally come to us. Anyway, Bean started to go from sweet border collie to territorial border collie. So we'll end the video there before she disturbs it. She's adorable though, very adorable. End the video.